Imagine being 21 years old and facing the most fortified city in the world, a city that had withstood 23 sieges over 1,000 years, a city protected by walls so massive they were called the Walls of God, a city that everyone said was impossible to conquer. Now imagine saying, "I will take it, or I will die trying." This isn't a movie. This is the true story of Mehmed II, later called the Conqueror, the young sultan who achieved what generations of warriors couldn't. The man who changed the course of world history in just 53 days. His conquest had everything: impossible odds, revolutionary military technology, a plan so crazy it shouldn't have worked, epic battles that made grown men weep, and a moment that ended the Middle Ages and began the modern era. Today, I'm going to tell you how a 21-year-old changed the world forever. By the end of this video, you'll understand why historians call the fall of Constantinople one of history's most pivotal moments. Ready to witness the impossible? Let's begin. The year 1451. Inside Topkapi Palace, a young prince named Mehmed becomes sultan for the second time. He's only 19 years old, and most people think he's too young, too inexperienced, too ambitious. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Mehmed had been obsessed with one goal since childhood: conquering Constantinople. This wasn't just about expanding territory. This was personal. This was destiny. Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, sat at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, controlling all trade between East and West. For over 1,000 years, it had been the capital of the Byzantine Empire, the last remnant of ancient Rome. Its walls had repelled Persians, Arabs, Vikings, and Crusaders. The city was considered invincible. When Mehmed announced his intention to conquer it, his advisors thought he was insane. His generals warned him it was suicide. European powers laughed at the arrogant young sultan. But Mehmed had a plan, and it was absolutely revolutionary. To understand the magnitude of what Mehmed attempted, you need to understand Constantinople's defenses. This wasn't just a fortified city, it was the most sophisticated defensive system ever built. 3 layers of walls, each higher than the last. The outer wall was 20 feet tall with a moat in front. The middle wall was 40 feet tall. The inner wall was 60 feet tall and 15 feet thick. For perspective, that's as tall as a 6-story building and thick enough to drive 2 cars side by side on top. A natural harbor protected by a massive chain stretched across the water, making naval attack impossible. Emperor Constantine XI had 7,000 defenders, including elite Genoese mercenaries led by Giovanni Giustiniani, one of Europe's best military commanders. Every military expert agreed Constantinople was impregnable. Attacking it was suicide. Mehmed was about to prove them all wrong. While everyone doubted him, Mehmed was building weapons the world had never seen. He hired a Hungarian engineer named Urban, who promised to build the largest cannons ever constructed. When Urban asked how big, Mehmed replied, "Build me cannons that can destroy the walls of Babylon itself." What Urban created was terrifying. A cannon so massive it required 60 oxen and 200 men just to move it. It fired stone balls weighing 1,200 pounds, over half a ton. When it fired, the sound could be heard 10 miles away, and the ground shook like an earthquake. The Byzantines had never seen anything like it. Medieval walls were designed to withstand arrows and catapults, not weapons that could literally pulverize stone. But Mehmed's innovation didn't stop there. He assembled the largest army ever to attack Constantinople: 80,000 soldiers, including elite janissaries, the world's first professional standing army. He built 120 ships to blockade the city by sea. By April 1453, Everything was ready. The siege that would change history was about to begin. April 6th, 1453. Mehmed's army surrounds Constantinople on all sides. The sight is overwhelming. Thousands of tents stretching to the horizon, massive cannons positioned facing the walls, ships blocking the sea. Inside the city, panic spreads. Emperor Constantine XI knows they're outnumbered 10-1, but the walls have never failed. They just need to hold out until help arrives from Europe. Help that will never come. Mehmed sends a final offer. Surrender now, and the city will be spared. Constantine refuses. He knows what surrender means for a Christian emperor to a Muslim sultan. On April 12th, the bombardment begins. The Great Bombard fires its first shot. The sound is apocalyptic. The 1,200-pound stone ball slams into the wall with such force that entire sections crack. Dust and debris fill the air. The Byzantines watch in horror as their impregnable walls start to crumble. But here's what makes the defenders incredible. Every night, they repair the damage. While the Ottomans rest, Byzantine workers frantically fill gaps with rubble, wood, anything they can find. It becomes a race. Can the cannons destroy faster than the defenders can repair? By late April, Mehmed faces a critical problem. The Golden Horn, the harbor on the city's north side, is still protected by that massive chain. His ships can't get through, meaning a whole section of walls remains safe from attack. His admirals tell him it's impossible to break the chain. The Genoese ships guarding it are too strong. Mehmed's response is one of history's most audacious military maneuvers. If the ships can't go through the water, they'll go over the land. His engineers build a road of greased logs from the Bosphorus, over the hills, down to the Golden Horn, about a mile of overland route. On the night of April 22nd, Ottoman sailors literally drag 70 ships over the hills and down into the harbor. Imagine waking up in Constantinople and seeing enemy ships inside your protected harbor. Ships that shouldn't be there. Ships that had somehow appeared overnight like magic. The psychological impact was devastating. The Byzantines realized they were facing a military genius who would stop at nothing. By early May, the walls are crumbling. Every day, the bombardment continues. Every night, exhausted defenders repair what they can. They're running out of men, supplies, and hope. Giovanni Giustiniani, the Genoese commander, is performing miracles. Every Ottoman assault, he's there, rallying the defenders, plugging gaps in the wall, inspiring men who should have broken long ago. But Mehmed has unlimited resources. Every failed assault, he sends fresh troops. The defenders have no replacements. Every man who falls is one less defender. Emperor Constantine XI knows the end is near. He sends desperate messages to Europe begging for help. None comes. Western Europe is happy to let the Byzantines fall. They've resented Constantinople's wealth and power for centuries. Constantine makes a fateful decision. He will fight to the end. When advisors suggest he escape, he refuses. The city falls, I fall with it. By late May, everyone knows the final assault is coming. May 29th, 1453. 1 a.m., Mehmed orders the final attack. Everything he has, all at once, overwhelming force from every direction. The bombardment intensifies to levels not seen before. Every cannon fires simultaneously. The noise is deafening. The walls, weakened by weeks of pounding, begin to collapse in multiple places. Wave after wave of Ottoman soldiers charge the walls. The defenders fight with desperate courage, throwing them back again and again. The battle is chaos, smoke, fire, screaming, the clash of steel. Then disaster strikes the defenders. Giovanni Giustiniani, their best commander, the man holding the defense together, takes a crossbow bolt to the chest. He's badly wounded and has to be evacuated. When the defenders see their hero being carried away, morale shatters. Mehmed sees the moment. He orders the Janissaries forward, his elite troops, fresh and disciplined. They hit the wall section Justiniani was defending. This time, the Ottomans break through. Once the Janissaries are inside, it's over. The Byzantines can't stop them. More Ottoman soldiers pour through the breach. The ancient walls, unconquered for 1,000 years, have finally fallen. Emperor Constantine XI dies fighting in the streets. His last words, according to legend, "The city is fallen and I am still alive." Then he tears off his imperial regalia and charges into the Ottoman soldiers. He dies as an emperor should, sword in hand, defending his city to the last breath. By noon, the fighting is over. Constantinople, the city of Constantine, capital of the Byzantine Empire, last remnant of Rome, has fallen. Mehmed, 21 years old, rides through the city. When he enters the Hagia Sophia, the greatest church in Christendom, he dismounts and picks up a handful of dust, pouring it over his head in a gesture of humility before God. He declares Constantinople the new Ottoman capital. He orders the Hagia Sophia converted to a mosque. He grants religious freedom to Christians and Jews who remain. The Middle Ages are over. The modern era has begun. The news of Constantinople's fall spreads across Europe like wildfire. The reaction is shock, horror, and disbelief. The Pope calls for a new crusade. He declares it the worst catastrophe since the crucifixion. But no European power will actually commit troops. Merchants panic. Their trade routes to the east now go through Ottoman territory. They'll have to negotiate with the Turks or find new routes. This economic pressure will help drive the age of exploration. The Russian Orthodox Church declares Moscow the Third Rome, the new protector of Orthodox Christianity, now that Constantinople has fallen. Celebrations last for days. Mehmed is given the title Fatih, the Conqueror. At 21, he's achieved what seemed impossible. But the most profound impact is what happens next. Here's something most people don't know. The fall of Constantinople directly caused the European Renaissance to accelerate. When the city fell, thousands of Greek scholars fled to Italy, bringing with them ancient Greek and Roman texts that had been preserved in Constantinople, knowledge of classical philosophy, mathematics, and science, artistic techniques, and architectural knowledge. These refugees settled in Florence, Venice, and Rome, where they taught Greek language and philosophy to Italian scholars. This influx of classical knowledge supercharged the Renaissance. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, they all benefited from the knowledge brought by Byzantine refugees. So in a strange twist of fate, Mehmed's conquest of Constantinople helped create the Italian Renaissance. The destruction of the last Roman city led to Rome's classical knowledge spreading across Europe. But Mehmed wasn't finished. Over the next 28 years, he transformed the Ottoman Empire. He conquered Serbia, Bosnia, Albania, and parts of Anatolia. He even attempted to take Italy, landing troops near Otranto. He made Constantinople, now Istanbul, a center of art, science, and culture. He invited scholars, artists, and architects from across the world. Unlike most medieval rulers, he granted religious freedom. Christians, Jews, and Muslims lived side by side in Istanbul. He began building projects that would make Istanbul one of the world's most beautiful cities. He learned 7 languages. He studied philosophy, mathematics, and military strategy. He collected art and manuscripts. But he was haunted by one question: what else could I conquer? Success bred ambition. If Constantinople fell, what else was possible? Mehmed became obsessed with conquering Rome itself. He wanted to reunite the Roman Empire under his rule, eastern and western halves together for the first time in centuries. In 1480, he landed an army in southern Italy. The invasion shocked Europe. If Mehmed took Rome, all of Christendom might fall. But then, something unexpected happened. May 3rd, 1481. Mehmed is leading his army on another campaign when he suddenly falls ill. He's only 49 years old and in excellent health. Within days, he's dead. The official cause, natural illness. But many historians suspect poison. Symptoms appeared suddenly with no warning. Death came unusually fast for a healthy man. His personal physician fled immediately after the death. Multiple palace factions had reasons to want him dead. His own son Bayezid, who feared being passed over for succession, the Grand Vizier, who worried about Mehmed's increasingly ambitious campaigns, European agents, who had everything to fear from Mehmed's continued expansion, will never know for certain. But the timing was convenient. Mehmed died just as he was positioned to potentially conquer Italy. With his death, the plan to take Rome died too. Mehmed the Conqueror died at 49, but his legacy lasted centuries. His use of artillery changed warfare forever. Every army after him had to adapt or die. He ended the Byzantine Empire and made the Ottomans the dominant power in the eastern Mediterranean for 400 years. Istanbul became one of the world's great cities, a bridge between East and West that still stands today. Historians mark 1453 as the end of the Middle Ages and the beginning of the early modern period. But perhaps his greatest legacy is this: he proved that the impossible can be achieved if you have the vision, courage, and willingness to innovate. Mehmed's story resonates today because it's about more than military conquest. When everyone said the walls couldn't be breached, he built bigger cannons. When they said ships couldn't reach the Golden Horn, he moved them over land. He refused to accept impossible. At 21, he achieved what veteran commanders couldn't. Youth and fresh thinking beat experience and tradition. From childhood, he had one goal: Constantinople. Everything he learned, every decision he made, moved toward that goal. The siege was incredibly risky. Failure would have meant his death and his empire's humiliation. But he calculated the odds and committed fully. These lessons apply to anyone trying to achieve something impossible today. Here's what keeps historians debating. What if Mehmed had lived another 20 years? He was preparing to invade Italy. He had the military power. If he'd taken Rome, would all of Europe have fallen? Would we live in a world where the Ottoman Empire controlled both Constantinople and Rome, where Islamic and Christian cultures merged differently? Would the Renaissance have happened the same way? Would the Age of Exploration? Would the Protestant Reformation? One young man's conquest changed everything. His early death left us with one of history's greatest what-ifs. So there you have it, the incredible true story of how a 21-year-old conquered the unconquerable city and changed world history forever. Mehmed the Conqueror shows us that youth isn't a weakness. It's often an advantage. That innovation beats tradition. That the impossible is just the possible that hasn't been attempted yet. What do you think? Could someone today achieve something as revolutionary as Mehmed did? What's the modern equivalent of conquering Constantinople? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this story amazed you, you absolutely need to subscribe because I'm revealing more incredible stories of young leaders who changed history. Next week, the teenager who became Genghis Khan's most feared general, the 16-year-old pharaoh who revolutionized Egypt, and the young queen who defeated 3 empires. These stories exist. They're epic. and they prove that age is no barrier to greatness. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss these legendary tales of youth conquering the impossible. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that their age doesn't define their potential. Let's make sure Mehmet the Conqueror gets the recognition he deserves as one of history's most brilliant military minds. Thanks for joining me on this journey through one of history's most pivotal moments. Remember, the impossible is just something nobody's figured out how to do yet. And I'll see you in the next one. Keep questioning what you think you know about what's possible.